The tensions with Russia over Ukraine, the U.S. delivering today a written response to Russia's demands that Ukraine would never join NATO. The U.S. making no such promise.
And we learned today that in the last 24 hours, there's been an increased Russian buildup of troops on the Ukraine border. Also, the U.S. military naming the 10 U.S. bases where some 8,500 troops are on heightened alert to deploy to Eastern Europe.
Over the weekend, we saw that massive Chinese incursion into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, 39 planes. But it's not just Taiwan. It's also Japan, also the Philippines, also India. China is threatening all of its neighbors, and it really looks like it really wants to break them apart sometime soon.
39 Chinese jets breached Taiwan's air defense zone. Of these, 34 were fighter jets, 4 were electronic warfare planes, and 1 was a bomber. This is not the first time that China is breaching Taiwan's air defense zone. The PLA has made a habit of it. For almost 2 years now, Chinese pilots have been making such incursions, around 380 in 2020. That's right, 380 incursions. And this is the year when China exported the Wuhan virus pandemic.
Israel successfully tested its Arrow 3 long-range missile defense system. Oftentimes, of course, used against Hamas and Islamic Jihad missiles coming out of Gaza. Then Israel has the David's Sling missile defense system, which is focused on mid-range missiles, but the Arrow system, which was tested today, is focused on long-range ballistic missiles. And no coincidence, folks, the timing of this test, Iran, over the past few weeks, has conducted several long-range ballistic missile tests. Now, for today's test, Israel shot down 2 projectiles with the Arrow 3 system. The test was conducted in central Israel, and by all accounts, Israel Defense Forces officials say, and the Defense Minister Benny Gantz says, this was a great success. But the big story here, folks, again, timing no coincidence. This was clearly a message to the Iranian regime and that Iranian axis that we've been talking a whole lot here about: Hamas, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, the Houthis in Yemen, and those Shia militias in Syria and Iraq, which surround Israel right now with a ring of fire, armed to the teeth with thousands, tens of thousands of ballistic missiles and attack drones, which brings us to yesterday's major attack against the capital city of the United Arab Emirates, Abu Dhabi.
We're living in an era when scarcity continues to aggravate all over the world. Global food supplies are at alarmingly low levels, while prices keep reaching new highs with each passing month. Extreme weather events and ravaging natural disasters have been affecting food production all across the planet. And the health crisis has undoubtedly pushed global supply chains over the edge. The situation is incredibly chaotic right now, and every time the supply chain crisis seems to be easing, a new disruption emerges to take things back to square one.
Hunger has rippled across South Africa over the past 1 year. 3 devastating waves of virus have taken away tens of thousands of breadwinners, leaving families unable to buy food.
Well, 6 years ago, the UN set the goal of ending world hunger by 2030. Back then, it seemed like an attainable target, but not anymore. It's now estimated that over 800 million people around the world do not have enough to eat. The island of Madagascar is facing a famine that the UN says is caused by climate change.
Years of failed rains has left hundreds of thousands of people staring down the barrel of what the UN is calling the world's first climate change famine.
It's a shocking and unmitigated disaster right now. Our shelves in our stores look like the Soviet Union in 1972. And it's honestly a shock to Americans. It's never happened in our lifetime.
A common sight at U.S. supermarkets these days, a lack of milk, pasta, berries, and more. as supply chain issues leave store shelves empty.
There's no meat, no toilet paper. It's just crazy.
Venezuelans took to the streets of Caracas on Saturday, banging empty pots to protest against chronic food shortages. There is Hunger Maduro reads one message, only the government is growing fatter reads another. The near-daily anti-government protests have now entered their third month.
And now to Cuba, where thousands marched across several cities yesterday in some of the biggest anti-government demonstrations on the island nation in decades. People took to the streets protesting food shortages and high prices as the country suffers through a crippling economic crisis, exacerbated by the pandemic.
The supply chain crisis taking a toll now on school cafeterias. Schools nationwide struggling to feed students as they face delays and shortages on everything from chicken to lunch trays.
Ayuda, alimento, porque eso no es por la cuarentena, es ayuda, alimento. El alimento es lo que están pidiendo la gente en estos momentos, alimento.
There are too many dead to cope with right now in parts of the Indian capital, and they're piled up in vehicles outside. The coronavirus rules mean this is where most relatives have to say goodbye. It's massively distressing and hugely undignified. They're working all hours inside. They just can't stop. And it's been like this for the last 2 weeks. All day and all night.
Now scientists are closely monitoring a new type of Omicron variant, sometimes called stealth Omicron, and health experts say it's been found here in central North Carolina.
Every section of society's been hit, with the deaths rising at their fastest rate since the start of the pandemic and cutting across every creed and religion. And as a COVID victim, that means the precious Muslim rituals are also banned. And their heartache is all the more because of what feels like gross insensitivity and a keen sense that all this could have been avoided.
The country, I'm feeling very bad. I have money, I have everything, but I can't save my sister. Because no bed, nothing like that. No gas, no oxygen, no bed. Where we can do, where we can go.
It is somehow unimaginable, unbelievable, that in the most famous city of the richest country in the world, they're digging mass graves for those who can't afford a funeral and for those who died of coronavirus with no next of kin. This is Hart Island, just off the Bronx in New York City.
One, two, three. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. You gotta roll. Roll.
Before it was, you didn't really have a time to think about it. You just had to get it done. Now you get time to sit back and look at what you've been doing and start processing your feelings. That could be one of my family members. That could be me.
The surge of coronavirus in New York City that pushed hospitals to the brink overwhelmed the system for tending to the dead. At the pandemic's peak, a New Yorker was dying almost every 2 minutes. The mounting deaths inundated funeral homes and left hospitals across the city without enough supplies, space, or manpower.
7.1 earthquake has hit California just one day after another earthquake, which is now being described as a foreshock, and dozens of aftershocks. The latest earthquake reportedly originated in the same desert area of California between Los Angeles and Las Vegas and could be felt as far away as Las Vegas. It was just yesterday that a rolling 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit, which was the most powerful quake in that region in 2 decades.
making sure that nothing is going to come down in the studio here.
And it is going for quite a bit, everybody. It continues
this is a very strong
to rattle
earthquake.
pretty strong here.
8:21 here on the air. We're experiencing very strong shaking. Wow. I think we need to get under the desk.
All right, we're going to go to break. We'll be right back after this. Wow.
Oh my god.
Nana!
Oh my god. I got it all on video, dude. Oh my god.
The lights are swaying.
This was a very severe event. Violent shaking. Debris falls from the ceiling. Terrified people dive under desks.
It's okay. You're okay.
This video from a TV reporter inside a 6th floor office of the Nesbitt Courthouse in downtown Anchorage shows the earthquake lasted several seconds. Inside this home, a horrified mother grabs her children. She heads toward the door, then hugs them. A passenger in this vehicle took this video of an off-ramp that collapsed. An SUV stuck in the middle of the damage. The earthquake, which measured 7.0, struck at about 8:30 a.m. local time, causing significant damage to homes, buildings, and other infrastructure across Anchorage.
Good day. We're coming on the air to update you on a major earthquake that has rocked central Mexico, a 7.1 magnitude quake that has caused some buildings to collapse in and around Mexico City. The quake itself centered about 75 miles southeast of Mexico City. There are active searches going on right now for those trapped. There is a rising death toll. We'll just leave it to say right now in the dozens of reported dead.
Sanitation officials say at least 29 people are dead after a major earthquake hit the island this morning. The quake's epicenter was far enough from the capital city of Port-au-Prince that the country may avoid the kind of devastation that we saw from an earthquake that hit the area in 2010. But the nation is still feeling aftershocks, and the damage is significant.
Aftershocks could shake Victoria for weeks to come after a record-breaking earthquake rocked the state this morning. Buildings crumbled and babies were snatched from their cribs in our biggest tremor since European settlement. Laura Turner reports.
A rude awakening. So powerful it shook the earth.
Oh my gosh.
The magnitude 5.9 quake taking a wall to the ground at Betty's Burgers on Chapel Street.
This is
and inside homes, pure panic. The quake shaking the shelves in a Campbellfield chemist and the 3AW studio in Docklands.
Have we just had an earth tremor?
The building shaking live on air.
Jesus, this is quite disturbing.
Actually, look at oh my God.
Turkey has been struck by a powerful earthquake off its Aegean coast, causing buildings to collapse in the coastal city of Izmir. The quake's epicenter was north of the Greek island of Samos, with the US Geological Survey putting it at a magnitude of 7.0. Tremors were felt as far away as Athens and Istanbul.
A powerful earthquake has struck northeastern Japan, injuring more than 130 people and leaving some 860,000 homes without power. Experts believe the quake was an aftershock from a massive tremor that hit the region 10 years ago.
Woken up with a jolt. A strong overnight quake as it hit northeastern Japan off the coast of Fukushima. The initial quake was followed by a series of aftershocks.
Welcome back. Going in depth tonight to the story we've been following this week. 3 additional earthquakes were confirmed in the Midlands. 10 quakes have rocked South Carolina in just over a week. This is a mystery that has a lot of people stumped. Tonight, we're asking geologists what this means.
A magnitude 6.2 earthquake has struck about 219 kilometers, 136.1 miles west-northwest of Pangai, Tonga. On Thursday, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, said the earthquake was at a depth of 14.5 kilometers. The USGS has issued a green alert for shaking-related fatalities and economic losses.
We are staying on top of breaking news right now in Puerto Rico, where another major earthquake has hit. A 6.4 magnitude earthquake hit the island overnight. And because this happened in the middle of the night, we are still waiting to hear about the extent of the damage or possible injuries. We do know that a lot of people don't have power there right now. In fact, our Fox News national team reports the entire island has lost power. And I'm communicating with someone on Facebook who is there now who says that the island is still without power. Now, this latest quake follows a 5.8 magnitude quake that led to homes collapsing yesterday morning. There were also reports of landslides yesterday. Again, I am communicating with someone on Facebook who says as this was happening, it was just horrible. Their homes were shaking, their roofs were crumbling, and their doors were shaking. Just an awful situation to go through. They said it sounded like a train was blowing through that area. Now, we are working to get more details on the extent of the damage. You are seeing some photos here on your screen. We're also working to get details about the extent of any injuries, if there are any injuries, or any possible deaths as well. So stay with us here on Fox 4 Morning News.
A divine symbol has appeared in Puerto Rico following the earthquakes that have devastated much of the island. Tonight, in the final piece of our 5-part series covering the earthquake recovery efforts, many in one town are saying God is certainly with them during the disaster. WFMZ's Jim Vassell is in our Burke studio tonight with that story. Jim?
Yeah, Rob, the word faith in Spanish is fe, and Puerto Rico is an island of faith. Most of the people who live there are followers of Christ, and tonight we will show you the sign that people there say affirms their faith even in tragedy. Days after the celebration of Christ's birth, a historic church in Puerto Rico claimed by disaster. Built in 1841, this is what remains of the Immaculate Conception Roman Catholic Church in Guayanilla.
My kids were all baptized there, and my daughter was married there.
On January 6th, Jimmy Maggicotti was in his usual morning spot outside the church playing dominoes with the boys when a 5.8 magnitude earthquake rocked the area. Brick by brick, Maggicotti saw his church come down.
As soon as it cracked, then the sides come down. Imagine if we were inside, it would have been something terrible, because where it collapsed, that's where I used to sit.
Local officials say the church can't be saved.
Everybody, the women were crying and hollering.
But a few miles away in the mountains of Guayanilla is what many in the town consider to be a sign from God. Fe, the Spanish word for faith, appears carved in the mountainside. Local officials say the earthquakes caused rocks and dirt to slide down the mountain, and in this prominent spot appears the divine signifier that a higher power is watching over them.
It's one of the best things that we have. We have faith in God, and we think that everything's going to be completely okay.
Ever thought that the world has kind of lost its way? Crazy as it seems, yeah, I know it's gonna be okay. Ooh, yeah, it doesn't scare me, it's temporary. There's something better we got forever, and it won't be long, cause we know our help is on the way. So keep your head up. Jesus is coming back. Jesus is coming back. No, don't you give